In many corporate environments, unspoken hierarchies often shape how people are treated, acknowledged, or dismissed. Beyond formal titles and job roles, there's an invisible current of assumptions and power dynamics that decide whose voice matters, whose competence is presumed, and who's expected to stay quiet. Within this setting, moments of underestimation aren't just personal, they're institutional, habitual, and often systemic. The story begins in a polished boardroom of a multinational consulting firm, a place built on prestige and appearances, where authority is reinforced not just by job descriptions, but by tone, posture, and the luxury brand of one's wristwatch. Mr. Hollard, the director of international strategy, represents everything the firm celebrates. A well-spoken, sharply dressed figure with years of industry jargon and the aura of someone who doesn't just talk, but concludes meetings. The employees surrounding him are trained to respond to cues. They know when to laugh at a joke, when to nod even if the concept floats above them, and when to stay silent. It's not necessarily out of fear, but out of the social rhythm that forms in rooms dominated by individuals like Hollard. Within this hierarchy sits Myra, a junior analyst with 2 degrees and a multilingual background. Her academic brilliance is present in her resume, but not yet in the room. She has the quiet posture of someone who knows more than she reveals, whose silence isn't timidity, but a calculation. She's learned that speaking before being invited can carry risks, especially when you're new, especially when you don't match the dominant identity of the people in power. Myra observes, listens, takes notes, and occasionally contributes in precise, calculated ways that are often ignored or acknowledged with a passing good point before being redirected to someone more senior. Hollard barely knows her name, and she knows that she knows the look he gives her is the same one he gives to interns and assistants, a glance rooted in assumption rather than recognition. That afternoon, during the meeting, he waves around a printed document, a foreign language report from a potential overseas partner. He plays it like a prop, turning it into an informal test of worth. Can anyone make sense of this? He says with performative exhaustion. There's a chuckle in his voice, not frustration. He's not really looking for an answer. He's creating a moment, reinforcing his own competence by dismissing others' limitations. He turns to Myra, almost like a game. Translate this, he says, and my salary is yours. It's not a real offer. The room knows it. It's an exaggerated challenge, a rhetorical jab, a display of dominance disguised as humor. Everyone understands their roles in this performance. Someone chuckles. Someone else raises their eyebrows with mild amusement. Myra looks up, not with fear, not with offense, but with stillness. She understands this is not about language. This is about power and doubt. She accepts. The room stops breathing. In the few seconds it takes for her to begin reading, the energy shifts. This isn't supposed to happen. She's supposed to laugh it off. She's supposed to deflect with a smile or mumble about not knowing the language. But instead, she reads, not just with accuracy, but with cadence. Not just with translation, but interpretation. The document is a multi-layered communication filled with subtext, a blend of commerce, politics, and subtle testing from the foreign partner. Her translation doesn't just convert words from one language to another. It adds insight, identifies strategy, reveals risk. And she does it effortlessly, almost like she's known the text for days. The director is caught off guard. His body stiffens, the performative smile fades. For a brief moment, the authority that once radiated from him becomes fragile. He realizes he's been the subject of his own joke. He tried to put her in a corner, but she redrew the room. The others around the table don't know where to look. Some are stunned. Some look at her with new awareness. And some shift uncomfortably in their chairs, because they recognize what just happened. A foundational assumption was shattered. This isn't just about a woman translating a document. It's about the collapse of a hierarchy, about the exposure of a flawed filter that had previously decided who gets taken seriously. Myra's fluency didn't just come from textbooks. It came from years of lived experience, from a childhood navigating cultures, translating immigration documents for relatives, decoding conversations in multiple languages at once. None of that is on her LinkedIn, but it's built into her DNA. Her intelligence is native, fluid, rooted in real-world necessity, not corporate posturing. But until this moment, it had been invisible because the room had never expected her to matter. Hollard, still holding the paper, feels his grip on the moment slipping. His authority, which had been reinforced by confidence and assumption, is now in question. He responds with a weak "Where did you learn that?" A question, meant to regain control, to remind her and the room that he's still the one asking questions. But the question only reveals his ignorance. He didn't bother to know who Myra was before mocking her. He didn't consider that someone junior could carry mastery in areas he never explored. Myra's reply is calm, simple, and my grandmother. I used to translate her government letters when I was 9. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't gloat. She doesn't need to. Her words are a quiet explosion in the room. They don't just answer the question, they expose the root of the problem. Her skills, her background, her entire contribution had been invisible, because they didn't fit the template of what authority had decided was worth noticing. Asterisk for years. People like Hollard have occupied rooms they believed they earned entirely, through merit, not realizing how much of their ascent was helped by the benefit of the doubt. Myra was never given that benefit. She had to earn every inch of presence, and now, with one translation, one moment of quiet clarity, she flipped the script. It is not about revenge or humiliation. It is not a dramatic takedown, it is simply the collision of competence with presumption. The moment lingers not because she embarrassed him, but because she disrupted the structure. The room will never see her the same way again. More importantly, they'll never unsee the possibility that there may be others like her, underestimated, because they lack value, but because no one ever gave them a stage. Asterisk her response forces a collective reckoning. People begin to realize how often they've joined in the laughter. How often they've watched others be reduced to punchlines, because someone senior felt entitled to test them. They remember meetings where they stayed quiet, not out of deference, but out of fear. The performance of authority begins to crack. What started as a joke ends as a mirror, and in that reflection, everyone sees their part. Myra, meanwhile, remains composed. She didn't come into the meeting looking for this moment. But now that it has happened, she isn't going to shrink from it. She folds her hands, leans back, slightly, and resumes her role at the table not as the junior analyst who was tested, but as someone who proved she belonged long before anyone asked her to speak. The moment is transformative, not because of the translation itself, but because of what it revealed about the structures around it. It becomes a case study not in linguistics, but in the power of presence. Myra's story is no longer about potential. It is about recognition. It is about what happens when silent capability is finally heard. And for those who underestimated her, it is a reminder, the most powerful people in the room are often the ones not talking. Let me know if you'd like this transformed into a script, short story, or visual narrative next. Asterisk. In the modern workplace, talent alone often isn't enough to be recognized. Skill must be coupled with confidence, timing, and sometimes, the courage to seize a moment that wasn't meant for you. That is the quiet battlefield Myra walked onto. The day she decided not to laugh off the director's challenge, but to meet it head. Her skill was never the issue. She had carried it with her for years, like second skin. What she hadn't been given was the space to show it. Confidence in her world wasn't expressed through loud interruptions or networking charisma. It had been built silently, from years of learning, from watching, from knowing when to speak and when to wait. Asterisk when Mr. Hollard jokingly told Myra to translate a complex document in return for his salary. It was meant to be dismissive. The laugh in his voice wasn't meant to encourage it, was meant to diminish. It wasn't a test of knowledge, but a theatrical moment, something he could use to reinforce his place at the top of the corporate ladder. It was the kind of challenge that was supposed to underline her limitations and highlight his superiority. But Myra didn't flinch. Her response wasn't driven by ego or a desire to embarrass him. She simply knew she could do it, and that knowing, that quiet, internal certainty was more powerful than any boastful claim. Asterisk, she took the paper and scanned it without hesitation. She didn't ask for time or a dictionary. She didn't preface her answer with disclaimers. She read it aloud, clearly and confidently, like someone who had nothing to prove but everything to offer. The room, which had seconds ago been a place of laughter and hierarchy, fell silent. The shift was immediate and unspoken. Myra's voice didn't fill the space with volume, but with weight. Her tone was calm but deliberate, the way a surgeon moves during a high-stakes operation. Precise. Sure, unshaken. It wasn't just about language. Anyone fluent could have translated words. Myra brought something else to the moment: interpretation, understanding, context. She didn't just know what the words meant, she knew why they were chosen, what they implied, how they fit into a larger diplomatic and business strategy. The document had layers, and she unfolded each one without asking for permission. Asterisk, the others in the room at level managers, associates, even the senior advisor began to listen, not as colleagues humoring a junior analyst, but as professionals, realizing that someone among them had been hiding brilliance in plain sight. They heard not only fluency but insight. She pointed out subtle cues in the phrasing that indicated caution, hints of conditionality masked as politeness, and even a reference to a previous policy error the company had made in a nearby region. These weren't things Google Translate would pick up. They weren't even things someone casually familiar with the language would necessarily catch. This was the work of someone who not only spoke the language, but thought in it. Asterisk, what made the moment even more powerful was Myra's composure. She didn't look around the room seeking validation. She didn't pause to see if anyone was impressed. She focused on the text, on conveying its content, on being accurate. Her confidence didn't need applause. It was not the kind cultivated through compliments, but the kind earned through years of being excellent without anyone watching. Mr. Hollard stood in place, his posture slightly shifting from relaxed to rigid. His smirk was gone, replaced by an expression caught between confusion and discomfort. This was not how the story was supposed to go. He had set the stage, expecting a laugh, a joke, a dismissive headshake. Instead, he was witnessing a of himself directly, but of the dynamic he had taken for granted. In that moment, Myra didn't just display skill. She redefined the room's understanding of what skill looked like. For so long, they had associated authority with assertiveness, leadership with volume, intelligence with title. Myra offered a different model, thoughtful, prepared, deeply capable, yet unassuming. She didn't fight for space, she expanded it. She didn't raise her voice, she deepened the conversation. Confidence like that doesn't come from corporate training modules. It is born in experience growing up solving problems with limited resources, being the family translator as a child, learning to switch languages and tones depending on who you were talking to. It is formed in environments where you're rarely the loudest person, but often the most informed. After she finished reading and provided her analysis, she gently handed the paper back. She didn't linger on her performance. She didn't gloat or follow up with a speech. She simply returned to her seat and sipped her coffee as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But for everyone else, something had. Her response didn't just change perceptions, it shifted the dynamic of the entire team. No one would look at her as just a junior analyst again. She hadn't demanded respect. She had earned it through demonstration, through the clarity of her contribution. She had flipped the power structure using nothing but her own quiet excellence. Even Hollard, whose authority had been challenged, had no space to counter. To say anything dismissive now would only reflect his own blindness. He didn't just fail to see her skill, he had mocked it. He had made her talent the subject of a joke, and in doing so, he had walked directly into a situation that revealed how narrow his leadership truly was. In private, moments later, he would likely reflect not only on Myra's abilities but on his own instincts, the reflex to challenge rather than listen, to perform dominance rather than nurture potential. In workplaces across the world, there are countless people like Myra, individuals carrying brilliance that remains dormant not because they lack ability, but because they lack opportunity. Their confidence is not always wrapped in charisma. It doesn't always come dressed in blazers or loud declarations. It resides in their preparation, in the certainty that comes from having already done the hard work, long before anyone noticed. Myra's story is a testament to the fact that real confidence is not loud, it's rooted. It's built in solitude and revealed in moments of tension. And when it meets skill earned, quiet skill, it creates a force that doesn't just demand respect, it makes disrespect impossible. Those who witnessed it may not have known how to process it in the moment. Some may have felt embarrassed for having underestimated her. Others may have felt inspired. But one thing was certain, the idea of who guessed to be the smartest person in the room had been rewritten, not through conflict or rebellion, but through competence and clarity. Myra didn't set out to make a statement. She simply chose not to hide what she knew when given the chance to show it. And in that decision, she taught everyone around her a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. Not because she tried to, but because excellence speaks even when it whispers. Let me know if you want this continued into a video script, cinematic scene, or adapted for another format.